evening, ladies and gentlemen. As I come here to Jerusalem, it is to cover this city with my violet flame cape, that the mankind that dwell in this part of the earth may know what they have not known for centuries and millennia. That is a release from many of the distressing and vicious tensions which have been generated in their consciousness simply because they have been unwilling to relinquish those feelings which they in some measure deem comfortable, when in reality they are creating more and more tensions without ever relieving the tensions which mankind has. Surely you understand tonight, as you have understood in the past, that darkness cannot become a taper which lights up the mind of man. Only light is a taper which can illumine the consciousness of all and bring them to that place where they are able to understand the law that requires humanity to call upon that law, that the fulfillment of that law be accomplished in any age and at any time. Humanity sometimes indeed play the role of a child. They do not seem to fully understand or to comprehend the natural order of manifestation. What mankind thinks within his heart surely will outpicture itself at some time or another in his life, and therefore whatever he thinks upon and dwells upon will become a fait accompli. Let mankind then recognize their need to purify their thoughts and feelings through attunement with the natural order of cosmic grace, which is within the heart of Christ. When men understand the nature of their holy Christ self in fuller measure, they will see that the exercise of God control is a requirement of the law. It is not enough simply that God is indeed in his heaven, as mankind say. They should also understand that he is functional here in the dimensions of form, and functional because humanity invite him to function. Here you have seen the manifestation in this city of Jerusalem of many manifestations of shrines and places mankind recognized as having existed in the historical past. There is, however, great uncertainty dwelling in the hearts of honest men as to where this or that shrine is located. For surely you can see that the historical dust, if it has settled, is certainly not a dust that stays settled for long. For mankind in actuality base most of their premises upon conjecture and what seems to them to be the right way. It is not important that man should discuss which spot Christ stood upon, for they should understand that Christ dwelled in this city, but more importantly still, dwells in the hearts of those men who invite him to live, to abide there. It is my desire then this night to increase the temperature of the spiritual climate in all nations and among the family of nations. I desire to see the great cosmic fires lit, and to see humanity molded and shaped. In fact, I desire to see them in many cases reshaped, for the multitudes are still dwelling in the tents of darkness in most of their religious application. They desire to see the light, but do not. They desire to be the light, but are not. They continue to abide in those traditional manifestations of thought and feeling, which they have exercised for centuries and millenniums. Do you see then the great need to produce what amounts to almost a complete change in humanity's consciousness? This is why there are so many problems in the world today, because individuals are unwilling to change their consciousness. They are not happy with it, but still they will not exchange it for a conscious awareness of greater light. Perhaps it is because they do not understand where the light dwells, where the light abides. The light has been placed in the blessed receptacle of the consciousness of man, and it is the responsibility of each one who would enshrine the light to recognize that he too is a shrine of God. Will you understand then that your bodies are the temple of God? Will you understand that God does abide within you? And if God abides within you, beloved hearts of light, then Christ abides within you. And if Christ abides within you, then from whence shall he come but from within yourself? And as Christ comes from within yourself, are you not also then a hallowed shrine? And are you not also then a recipient of greater grace, simply because Christ abides within you? Is it not then a part of greater wisdom to welcome Christ, to expand him, to amplify his consciousness, simply by submitting your own degraded consciousness to the light of perfection? For perfection abides within you also. Yet there is in the duality of man the manifestation of those traditional thoughts and feelings which are no part of God. Would it not then be a wise thing, beloved ones, if individuals would relinquish their hold upon those vestiges and traces of darkness which have given them no comfort through the ages, but have continually recreated in the domain of thought and feeling those manifestations which are made in the similitude of the carnal mind? We today wish to stress to you, who have come to see and behold those sacred shrines, to understand that just as those shrines do exist in the sense that Christ did walk among men here in Jerusalem and the surrounding area, so then does there exist within every man's heart a little focus, a miniature focus of the New Jerusalem and the Old Jerusalem as well. The New Jerusalem in the sense that, behold, I make all things new, and the Old Jerusalem in the sense that the old traditional markings of the raising of mankind's consciousness throughout the ages has left its imprint upon the whole world without his ever having moved from his own armchair. Well then, you may say, why did we seem to approve your coming here? Well, beloved hearts of light, there is no harm done but a great deal of good. For you have made a pilgrimage into this area, and you are able to see for yourselves some of those conditions which require change, and you are able thus to participate in removing certain conditions from yourself, simply because there will be a greater impelment within yourself of the desire to release mankind from bondage into the freedom of the Christ flame. You may well say then, Christ was born 2,000 years ago. And it is so. But because you have been here, you will be able to feel with greater awareness the magnificent activities that were started in the cosmic ethers. For above this land, in the resurrection temple of Jesus and Mary, there abides a restorative faculty which can be contacted by you in your finer bodies while you are either asleep or awake, but most specifically when the physical consciousness is sleeping, thus raising no oppositional factors whatsoever to your contact with those magnificent flames which act both centripetally and centrifugally. Do you understand how there is a simultaneous action, almost what we could call the action of the cosmic caduceus, that enables mankind to raise the wings of the mind through contacting the sacred fire temples in the etheric realm? For while mankind, if they had had their own way, would no doubt, providing they were able to summon a sense of value, have long ago marked here upon the earth the exact location of the various stations of the cross, so outlined by Roman Catholicism. At the same time, we want individuals to understand that simply because they did not have an awareness of Christ's mission and identity at the specific time in which he lived does not mean that here in this city the record was not actually made. Therefore, let all understand that just as the record was made, so it was also exalted above the plane of the physical into the etheric realm above this city. There is then a niche in this city for each sacred shrine, and the individuals who come to this city for a spiritual experience and a pilgrimage ought to ask that their consciousness be anchored in the etheric realm, where the true shrines of the Spirit are here. Let all understand then that those shrines which are here in the etheric realm are ready to release their burden of light into the conscious mind of all, providing the individual is willing to make the call and then stand expectantly awaiting the answer. Does not the call compel the answer? And when the answer is given, will it not be given in order to illumine you, to raise you out of the ordinary sense consciousness into greater awareness of God? I think this is true. And if this is true, then does not the responsibility fall also upon each individual monad, that he may recognize his need to make the call for his individual illumination and quickening? But if you are quickened, what will it do for the rest of the world? Beloved hearts, what happened when the Christ was raised? Did it not bless the fabric of the whole earth? So then, when you are able to make your attunement with these shrines, do you understand that it is not always necessary for individuals to be physically present? For you will be able now, once you have anchored in your consciousness a greater awareness of this place and the sacred fires that still blaze here, to carry back into your own lands those blessed experiences which you have had here, and will thus be able to recreate them at will, providing you make the necessary application. Do you not think then that it is a responsibility of the individual pilgrim to make this attunement, that whereas you may carry various relics and mementos back to your lands, it certainly does follow that you ought to make the attempt to carry back to your country and within your own heart the various spiritual focuses in a miniature form, for you can do this most easily without in any way detracting from the blessed radioactivity of the focuses of God that are established here. The ancient records clearly declare the markings for the consciousness of man, providing he does reach out and sustain his momentum of that which has been in former times. But surely you are aware of the fact that with all the blessings that are heaped upon your head by heaven, that you will surely experience a growth in consciousness as you continue to reach out into this land and the etheric cities that are over it. For surely you know that as in the parable of the fig tree, when Christ said, "No man shall eat of thee fruit henceforth forever," you can plainly see then that he was able to create by the words that he spoke what may be called and is an anathema, well then do you see how easy it is also for him or for you or for God to create and to sustain a momentum of blessedness which shall be to all people. Long ago, when Christ was born in Bethlehem, did not the song of the angels ring out over the plains of Bethlehem? Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill to men. This is our mission today. It should be yours also, regardless of what activity takes place in the world of form, regardless of mankind's desire to perform destructive activities and retaliations. Surely you are aware of the fact that heaven is not sleeping, that heaven is diligent, that heaven is maintaining, through the brotherhoods of light, a continual monitoring of human expression, with many warnings sent forth in due course of time, in order to raise mankind's consciousness to higher levels, and that he may indeed resist evil when he should. When mankind understand this activity correctly, they will understand when they should resist evil and when they should not. This is a very important activity of discernment, which when a man is able to recognize, he is able to live in greater measure according to the ascended master consciousness. Now then, surely you are aware of the fact that the beauty of Christ's perfection is being released unto you each day, that the measure of that perfection within yourself is truly the fullness of God each day. Yet you may rightfully ask this question: why does it not manifest in a given day with all of its perfection? Simply, beloved ones, because your faith requires strengthening. When your faith is strengthened and you are able at last to recognize that God good and Christ good is being formed within you, you will no longer feel the human pull of the senses upon your consciousness, which have a tendency to deny the virtue of the Christ resurrection that is within yourself. Instead, you will be able to recognize clearly that you are being molded in the cosmic shape of things to come, which are the icons of the Spirit and the Christ image. When these things are established within you as focuses of great light, it simply means that your consciousness is being transformed by that light. And with each transformation, there are little burnings of darkness that take place, and the dissolvement of that darkness in your consciousness, until at last you stand free and able to enter into the very spirit of the ascension, to pass through all the transcendent victories of Christ realization for yourself, that in visiting what mankind have termed the stations of the cross, they may see at last that the cross is simply a meeting between God and man. They will see then that the mediatorship of the Christ was an expression of great dimension, and that the mystic brotherhoods throughout the earth that have truly perpetuated the light of 10,000 suns, the Christ light of magnificence, which is actually within the temple of illumined mankind, are indeed perpetuating the light of the Shekinah glory within the heart of King Solomon's temple. Let all then understand that the building of the temple is a spiritual activity that must and does cover years and centuries. For individuals are born, they live for a few short years and a lifespan, and then they pass through the gate of death. Later on, they are once again restored to the world of form as step by step humanity is raised up the cosmic ladder of life and light, the cosmic ladder of loveliness, where they are able to reach forth their hands in full faith, that when they reach forth their hands, they will realize that we are extending our own to them, that touch which then results is the consummation of divine love being extended from the divine level to the earth beneath. You are divine beings, but so are all mankind. The problem then lies in the recognition of that factor. When men fail to recognize that they are divine beings, they then act and resemble, tragically, those things which are the carnal consciousness of the carnal mind. Ecce homo, behold the man. What is man then that thou art mindful of him? Truly, mankind hold within themselves, in the chalice of their being, a dual consciousness. Let them understand then the need to repudiate the serpentine labyrinth of human experience by the perpetual raising of the icons of light and loveliness into manifestation, that the conscious mind of Christ Jesus be indeed the activity of God within them, that their minds become imbued with His consciousness, His love, and His willingness to do the will of God. Then they will indeed pass through the Gethsemane experience. They will indeed be pressed as a ripe olive, and there will come forth the distillation of the oil of the Spirit poured upon the rock, and the flame will burn with its own natural heat and consume the dross in human experience as mankind are raised into their own Christ reverence. The great tragedies of the ages, beloved hearts of light, have been mankind's failure to recognize their own Christ magnificence. For when mankind fails to recognize their own Christ magnificence, the mission of each master is rendered ineffectual for them. The beauties of spiritual experience must come to all, and when they do, it will be the fulfillment of a promise which God made long ago to the soul. Have you ever recognized, beloved hearts of light, that the soul within you has held its own silent communion with God, apart from matters of human thought and feeling? That all the time, both when you are awake and when you are sleeping, there is this communion between yourself and your divine presence. But, beloved hearts of light, it is utterly necessary that you should externalize in your consciousness the domain of divine deliverance, your own blessed freedom from fear, from doubt, and from those consuming fires that are actually of this carnal mind of man, rather than the consuming fires that are of the Spirit. For there are two types of flames, beloved ones. There are the burning flames of the world, the burning and smoking lamp which passed before Abraham, which was obscure. And also there is the clean burning flame of Christ's purity, which is a consuming flame that will indeed create that attitude of thought and feeling which makes mankind to recognize at last that he is an embryonic God created in the divine image and able to raise his consciousness to that point where he can faithfully accept from the hand of God and the brotherhood those necessary experiences and vestments which will enable him to progress spiritually, step by step, into the very center of his own God-given gift of divinity. When this is true, then the purposes of the Christ are fulfilled in that individual. And he, having followed also in the footsteps of the masters, having walked the way which they have walked, will find in the ritual of his deliverance the joy of God that is eternal, thus adding this blessing to the world's hope, that the light of hope may never be extinguished, that the joy of freedom may flood the cup of the world, and that the consciousness of all shall be enabled willingly and graciously to enter into the full acceptance of the reality of the sons of God who have walked among men, that others may also follow in their footsteps. I thank you.